Subscribe to Dr. Nightmare Channel now.
Story 1. What we found beyond the dunes. Spring break wasn't supposed to be this quiet. We were 5 friends from a small college in Tennessee: Carson, Avery, Matt, Olivia, and me. None of us had the money for Cancun or Miami, and we definitely weren't interested in crowded parties or spring break specials. What we wanted was isolation, solitude, a place where the only sound would be waves crashing and beer cans hissing open. So when Carson found a week-long rental tucked deep along the Alabama coastline for almost nothing, we jumped at it. The house was old, weather-worn, perched just beyond a long stretch of wind-blasted dunes. No neighbors, no fences, no sounds except wind and tide. The listing described it as rustic coastal charm, but when we arrived late that evening, it looked more like something that belonged in a missing persons case. Wooden slats curled at the edges like peeling skin. The porch sagged. A faded wind chime clattered uselessly in the breeze. It didn't matter. We were here, and we had the beach all to ourselves. Inside, the air was damp and musty. Everything smelled like salt and mildew, like no one had been here in years. But it had electricity, running water, and a view of the ocean. That was enough. We dropped our bags, cracked some drinks, and set up a fire pit in the backyard. As the sky went dark and the stars stretched across the horizon, the silence hit us. Real silence. No traffic, no people, not even the distant sound of a boat motor. Just waves. At first it was peaceful, but the longer it went on, the more it felt unnatural. Like the world had forgotten this place. Around midnight, Avery pointed toward the dunes. Anyone else feel like we're being watched? We all turned, eyes scanning the jagged line of sand and scrub. By what? Carson laughed. By the ocean? But Olivia didn't laugh. She just stared at the top of the dunes, her eyes unfocused. I swear I saw someone standing up there. We looked again, but there was nothing. Just moonlit sand and twisted vegetation swaying in the wind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The room was too still. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every groan of old wood sounded like breathing. I rolled onto my side and stared at the window. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw a shadow move across it. I closed my eyes and told myself it was just the wind. The next morning, the house felt colder. The wind was sharp, even though the sky was clear. Carson was already up, digging through his gear and charging his drone. He wanted to get some aerial shots of the beach and dunes for his YouTube channel. Come with me, he said, slinging his camera bag over his shoulder. You'll love this view. So we followed him, climbing the dunes behind the house. It was harder than it looked. The sand shifted under our feet, and the air felt heavier the higher we got. That's when we saw it. A wooden staircase. Just sitting there, half buried in sand. The top led to nowhere. No platform, no structure, just steps leading up into empty air. It looked like it had been part of something long gone, maybe a lookout or lifeguard station. but there were no remains around it, just that rotted, gray staircase. Matt stepped forward, squinting at the base. "Guys." We followed his gaze. Footprints. Dozens of them, pressed into the sand, all leading toward the stairs, none coming back. They weren't old either. The sand hadn't filled them in. Some still had crisp edges like they'd been made yesterday. Matt crouched down and touched one. "These are fresh." Then Olivia gasped and pointed to something just off to the side. Half buried in the sand was a torn sleeve. Carson pulled it free, revealing the shredded remains of a hoodie. It was soaked, moldy, but the back was still legible. Someone had scrawled something in black ink or ash. "Do not climb." We left immediately. Back at the house, we tried to shake it off. Carson said it was probably just an old storm wreck. Matt joked about ghost stairs. Olivia pulled up some urban legend about cursed structures found in the woods, staircases that went nowhere but called to people in their dreams. Olivia didn't say anything. That night, the lights in the house flickered twice. We blamed the old wiring. Then the hot water went out. We blamed the plumbing. But when Matt found claw marks on the outside of the kitchen door the next morning, deep, splintered gouges, no one had a joke for that. We started keeping the doors locked, even during the day. Carson sent the drone up again. He said he wanted to map the dunes, see if anything else weird was out there. We watched the live feed on his laptop as the drone zipped across the landscape. Everything looked normal, just endless sand and wind-bent brush. Until something flickered into frame. Just for a second, a shape at the top of the staircase. We all saw it, just a blur, a tall black figure, then static. The drone's feed went dark and the signal dropped. When we found it hours later, it was smashed to pieces in a hollow at the base of the dunes. Its camera was missing. That night, Olivia cried herself to sleep. The wind outside sounded like whispers. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow. Deliberate. Then a knock. Just one. Not loud, not urgent, like a reminder. The next morning, Carson was gone. His bed was empty, his keys and wallet still on the nightstand. We searched the house, the dunes, the beach, screaming his name. No answer. Then we found his shoes, perfectly placed at the base of the staircase. The footprints were back, leading up the stairs. None came down. We waited for hours, called the police, but service was terrible. Olivia climbed to the highest point she could find to get a signal, and even then it was barely 1 bar. The call dropped twice before she could give them our location. By the time the police arrived late that afternoon, the wind had picked up. The stairs were half buried again. The prints were gone. So was Carson. The police searched for hours. Drones, dogs, heat sensors, nothing. Probably got drunk and wandered into the surf, one officer said. But his cone was forced. He didn't believe it either. That night, none of us spoke. The house felt poisoned. The walls groaned like they were collapsing inward. Every door creaked. Every window felt watched. Avery left the next morning. just got up, packed her bag, and walked down the road until she got signal to call a ride. Matt went next, said he couldn't sleep anymore, that he kept dreaming about the staircase, that something was calling his name from the top step. It's just Olivia and me now. We don't talk, we barely eat. The wind won't stop. I thought about leaving too, but I keep thinking about the figure we saw on the drone feed, the way it stood there, the way the stairs looked, waiting. I haven't slept in 2 days. Last night I heard Carson's voice outside the window. He said he found it. He said, "I need to see." This morning, there were footprints leading to the back door. Bare, human, one set. And the sand by the dunes is shifting again. I think it's time to climb.
Story 2. He followed us from the pier. It was our final spring break before graduating. One last chance to be stupid together before real life started. So we chose somewhere none of us had been. Rockport, a small town off the Gulf with a broken down pier, a couple of tourist shops, and rental houses that were cheap because no one wanted to go there anymore. It was me, Rachel, Lauren, and Joe. The house we booked looked better in the photos. In person, it had this faded, washed-out feel, like the whole building had been left out in the sun too long. The furniture was old, the windows were thin, and everything smelled like wet driftwood. Still, it was close to the water and we didn't care. We dumped our bags, got into swimsuits, and made the short walk to the pier. That's when we first saw him. A man, standing at the very end of the wooden boards, staring out at the water. He was tall, wearing a weathered denim jacket and dark pants. His hands were at his sides, not moving, not swaying with the wind. We joked about him, said he looked like some tortured poet or a ghost waiting for his lover to return. Rachel tried to sneak a picture of him, but as soon as she held up her phone, he turned around. It was fast, unnaturally fast. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared at us. And then he turned back to the sea. That night, we were drinking on the deck behind our rental when Joe pointed at the sand dunes a few yards away. Is that the guy from the pier? There was a silhouette near the base of the dunes, barely lit by the moon, standing still, watching us. Rachel stood up fast, knocking over her drink. Okay, what the hell? Lauren grabbed the flashlight from her phone and pointed it out toward the shape. But by the time the beam reached that spot, there was nothing there. We checked the sand. No footprints. We tried to laugh it off, convinced ourselves it was just the wine or shadows or one of those creepy optical illusions that happen when you stare into the dark too long. Still, we locked all the doors and windows that night. The next morning, I went out early to get coffee from the tiny gas station nearby. The cashier was this old woman with long gray hair tied in a braid. She asked if we were staying in the yellow rental near the dunes. I said, yeah. She didn't smile. She just said, be careful. Some places hold on to people that don't belong anymore. I thought it was just small-town weirdness. I smiled, paid, and left. When I got back, Rachel was standing outside the front door barefoot, shaking. She said she woke up to someone whispering her name through the window. She thought it was Joe or Lauren messing around, but when she looked outside, she saw a man walking down the road away from the house. Same denim jacket, same slow steps, but no one else had heard anything. We found boot prints under Rachel's window, deep ones. That night, we tried to drown it all out with music and margaritas. But every time the music stopped, between songs or when someone changed the playlist, we felt it again, like something was listening. Lauren was the first to break. Around midnight, she said she couldn't sleep in the room near the dunes. She said she kept hearing scratching, said it sounded like someone was dragging their fingers across the siding. She slept on the couch instead. Rachel stayed up with her. Joe and I went to our room, but I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy, stagnant. I kept hearing faint sounds through the walls, like murmurs in a different room. But whenever I held my breath to listen closer, it stopped. At some point, I must have dozed off. But I woke up around 3 a.m. to a loud bang. I ran to the front door. The front door was open. Lauren was gone. Rachel was crying. She said Lauren had gotten up to use the bathroom, then stopped at the window and just stared out for a long time. She looked like she was in a trance, she whispered. Then she walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. Didn't say a word. We grabbed flashlights and ran out after her, but she was gone. We searched for hours. The only thing we found were footprints that led toward the pier, then vanished in the sand. By the time the police arrived, the sun was already up. They asked us if she'd been drinking, if she had a history of mental illness, if there was a fight. They didn't believe us. Not about the man at the dunes, not about the whispers, not about the prince. They said she'd probably show up by evening. She didn't. We stayed one more night, mostly because we didn't know what else to do. Rachel refused to sleep. Joe tried to, but kept waking up in cold sweats. I just laid there in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl across the dunes like a voice without a mouth. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I heard music. Soft, distant music, coming from the pier. I sat up, my chest tightened. Something about the melody was familiar. It was Lauren's playlist. I got up and walked to the window. There was a figure standing at the end of the pier just like before. But this time, there were two. One taller, one smaller. One of them was holding a phone. The screen glowed faintly blue. And then without warning, both of them stepped off the edge and vanished into the water. I screamed. Rachel and Joe came running, but when they looked, there was nothing. Just empty sea. We left at dawn. Lauren was never found. We deleted our pictures from that trip, blocked out the rental's address, haven't spoken about it since. But sometimes, when my phone is dead silent, I swear I hear that music again, playing somewhere just out of reach.
Story 3, Room 209. Spring break was supposed to be simple. Just a few nights away from everything, no exams, no dorms, no responsibilities. Just sleep, sun, and silence. That's what we thought when we booked the hotel. It was an older place, tucked between two newer high-rises along the Florida coast. The listing described it as retro, which was their way of saying it hadn't been renovated since the 80s. Yellowed curtains, faded wallpaper, and carpets that held the ghosts of every guest who'd spilled something over the past 40 years. But it was cheap. And after driving nearly 10 hours with barely enough cash for food and gas, we weren't in a position to complain. There were 3 of us, Maya, Talia, and me. We were all seniors, all exhausted from the brutal midterms, and ready to spend 5 days doing absolutely nothing. We checked in late on a Tuesday. The lobby was eerily quiet. No music, no TV,
Just a bored-looking man behind the desk who barely looked up when we came in. Room 209, second floor, end of the hall. The elevator creaked as it took us up. The hallway was dimly lit, the carpet squishy under our shoes, and the walls smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something metallic. Our room had 2 beds, 1 bathroom, and a sliding door that led to a narrow balcony overlooking the alley. Not the beach view we had hoped for, but again, we were broke. We dropped our bags, turned on the ceiling fan, and collapsed. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps above us. Slow, heavy steps, then a dragging sound. I figured it was someone moving luggage upstairs, maybe a late check-in, but it kept going, back and forth, drag, back, drag, over and over again. Maya groaned from the other bed. "You hearing that too?" I said yes. We both tried to ignore it, but by the 3rd night, the sound hadn't stopped. We asked the front desk if anyone else was staying above us. The man just blinked slowly and said, "There's no 3rd floor." I stared at him. "What? There's clearly something above us. We hear walking every night." He shrugged. "Storage. Maybe rats. Try earplugs." Back in the room, we looked up. The ceiling was water-stained in one corner. It pulsed slightly like it was breathing. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Talia said she had a dream that someone was standing at the foot of her bed. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She said she saw a tall man with no eyes, just holes where his eyes should have been, staring down on her, grinning. We told her it was probably sleep paralysis, but I didn't believe that. That same day, we decided to check out the beach. On the way out, Maya spotted something weird. A missing person flyer posted on the bulletin board near the vending machines. The photo was blurry, but the face looked familiar. Talia squinted at it. "Wasn't that the girl who checked in the same night we did?" I looked closer. Same hair color, same hoodie. The date on the flyer was from 3 months ago. We asked the front desk about it, and the same guy just looked up and said, "Don't know who that is. Probably some prank." That night, the dragging got louder. It didn't sound like a rat anymore. It sounded like something being pulled, something heavy, wet. Around 3:14 a.m., Maya sat straight up in bed, gasping. "I just saw someone walk into the bathroom," she whispered. I turned and looked. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. The light was off. No one had gone in. I got up and opened the door fully. Nothing, no one, no sound. Then I looked down at the floor. Wet footprints, bare feet, coming out of the shower, but we hadn't used it in hours. That was the last straw. We packed our bags, ready to leave first thing in the morning. We didn't even care about the money. But before we left, Talia insisted on one last look around. She said she needed to prove to herself it wasn't just her mind playing tricks. We walked the hallway one last time, took the stairs this time, not the elevator. That's when we found the door. Room 309. The 3rd floor didn't exist. That's what they told us. But somehow we were looking at a single hallway with one door at the very end. No windows, no other rooms, just a single heavy door. The number plate was tarnished but readable. Maya reached for the handle. It was unlocked. Inside, the room was nearly identical to ours, except everything was wrong. The walls were mold-stained. The furniture was covered in thick dust. The beds were sunken in the middle like something had been lying there for years. The bathroom door was hanging off its hinges, and on the mirror, written in something dark, was a word: stay. behind us, the door slammed shut. Talia screamed. We tried the knob, locked. Maya pounded on the door. Then we heard the dragging, not above us this time, inside the room, coming from the bathroom. The sound of wet feet slapping the tile, dragging behind them something heavy. We backed away as the bathroom light flickered on by itself. Then something stepped into the doorway. Tall, skin hanging off like wet paper. Its eyes were just holes, black, empty holes. And it smiled. We screamed. We kicked the door. We threw a chair against it. Then, without warning, it opened. We bolted out, down the stairs, out into the daylight. The man at the front desk didn't even look up as we ran past him. We didn't stop until we were back in the car, bags still half zippered, hands shaking too badly to drive. We left without checking out. Later that night, I tried to find the hotel online, but every search came back blank. The listing was gone. No website, no number. The address on our GPS now pointed to an empty lot. Maya swears we imagined it. Talia is in therapy. She can't even sleep with the lights off anymore. As for me, I never unpacked the bag I brought, because when I opened it, there was water inside, and a single bare footprint pressed into one of my shirts.